Here's a big shocker that I'm sure no one has realized up to now. Donald Trump is not liked by a lot of people in this country. That's right, President Trump has been an unpopular president since before he was even elected president. And now, with what we have going on in the streets today, there are a lot of people who were writing a fence on who to vote for that seem to be pushing for Joe Biden. Now, some people are really walking a tightrope, and they're telling people that, Trump's a bad president. We need change. We need a third party. Yet, and too many independent media outlets are out here covering the horse race and blah, 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 and so is a sheep herder. Yet, let me tell you why Donald Trump is bad and why Joe Biden is slightly better, and we probably just I'm not going to tell you go vote for Joe Biden, but I'm going to tell you, after all this time, I'm also going to tell you how he is the lesser of two evils, and it might not be a bad idea if Joe Biden got elected. Let's examine that for just a moment. Okay. I once said that Donald Trump would crush Joe Biden in the general election unless something happened between that time that I said that and November. You can go back a couple months when I've been saying this and when we found out Joe Biden was going to be the presumptive nominee. Unless something happens between now and November that just absolutely buries Donald Trump and makes him look like shit. Now, some people say, well, he's looked like that the entire time. Not to the level you've got going on right now with the protests and his threats of invoking the military and gassing peaceful protesters for a photo op. For God's sake, he's even getting criticized by Pat Robertson right now. Okay? So I said that unless something happened, Trump would crush Biden. Well, as it turns out, people thought it was going to be COVID. Well, maybe COVID hurt him, but this has certainly hurt Donald Trump. We could be looking at that one issue that I spoke of that is going to swing this election around to Joe Biden. Now, understand this, there's still time between now and November, and something could completely change between now and November. Something could happen that could absolutely bury Joe Biden. At this point, though, just going off the way things look right now, Joe Biden has the strongest chance that he's ever had to win the election in November. Now, a part of me still says it's going to be at best a very close call for Joe Biden. I don't see him beating Donald Trump in a landslide. But if things continue, it could reach that point. Again, I'm no fortune teller. Just basing it off of what we're seeing right now. And there's a lot of time, unless these riots continue, for a lot of people to calm down between now and November. And I expect that they could go right back and still vote for Trump because they're not happy with Joe Biden. Now, let's just be perfectly honest. For all the people saying let's go back to the normalcy, the defense that Tulsi Gabbard was, a wise prophet who saw all of this coming, okay? She made the decision that none of us could see because we were so blind that Joe Biden was the best candidate, as a matter of fact. And yeah, he sucks on trade. He blows at foreign policy, but he's not as provocative as Trump, except when he is provocative on the floor of the Senate, except when he is provocative when he talks about 7-Eleven, and except when he is provocative talking about putting people back in chains. you just don't get the same coverage from the mainstream media about the old crazy Uncle Joe that you get about Donald Trump. If they covered Joe Biden the same way and pitched Joe Biden to be the same racist jackass that they pitched Donald Trump to be to their viewers, understand this, Joe Biden would be looked at a lot different as we speak. Okay? So that needs to be understood first of all. But second of all, this whole defense that Tulsi saw it coming, no. Tulsi did whatever she did for her own reasons, but by no means am I bought and sold on the concept that she was this wise fortune teller who knew all this would happen. So she hedged her bets early and got behind Joe because she thought we needed to go back to normalcy. And I've said this normalcy thing multiple times now, right? So let's talk about normalcy. People are seeming to be under the impression that because you have the riots in the streets, that Joe Biden, since he's the more even-toned individual, meaning he's the best bullshitter, because again, he's been part of the problem that has led to this, yet now he's got that calm leadership style tone that's going to tell us all how we need to hear these people that are rioting. We need to understand the struggle that the black community is going through. It's time they get their justice. Oh, but goddamn, 20 years ago, you were saying lock them up. You're talking about locking them up. Hillary Clinton's calling them super predators. Joe, I think you're just the man for the fucking job. Okay? So, first of all, he's not the answer. He's just got this even tone at the moment. But his track record has shown he's part of the problem. So if Joe is the one that's going to take us back to normalcy, understand what you're going to get out of normalcy. They don't want these riots to continue. And they think that, I'm guessing from what I'm hearing from a lot of the people on social media and on YouTube, is that if Joe Biden gets elected, this whole violence, riot style stuff is going to subside. It's going to go away. We'll get 4 years of shitty leadership. We're going to probably get 4 years of shitty leadership either way, but at least the violence is going to subside. And so at least we'll get that out of it, right? And They seem to think that if Donald Trump is defeated, that there won't be another Donald Trump elected, that people will realize the Donald Trump experiment failed. Interesting takeaway. Understand this, folks. While there are a lot of people who are placing a lot of blame at the feet of Donald Trump right now, there are just as many, potentially, who are supporting Donald Trump because they do not agree with what they're seeing in these riots. Now, I know that's going to come across controversial to some. But again, as I've stated, we hear a message from these protesters, but their targets don't exactly seem to line up with what they're complaining about. Now, Kyle Kulinski just covered, literally, that there's a new poll showing how many Americans support burning down a police department. So, as I've said, first of all, if the targets were aimed at the people that you're complaining are your problem, you'd probably get support from a lot more folks because they understand there is a problem that you're complaining about. They understand you're telling the truth that you have a problem with this certain entity. And if you were taking it up with them, they would say, okay, yeah, we understand these people are so pissed off and they've reached their limit, that it's a war between, the cops and the black community because they're tired of being, killed, because of profiling and crime bills and stop and frisk and every damn thing else, okay? A lot more people could understand, but you'd lose So many people, when you say we're tired of getting killed by cops, we're tired of getting run down by our government who doesn't give a rat's ass about us, go burn the O'Reillys. And there's a lot of people that's like, the fuck did they have to do with any of this? What did they do to you that caused George Floyd's death? What did they do that killed Trayvon Martin? What did they do to kill Aubrey? What did they do to any of these people? Nothing. And you're not going after the problem. You're going after people because you're mad that were not involved and it wasn't even their business or their system or anything that was involved. The police were involved in majority of these, okay? The government, certainly with the kind of laws they've passed that have caused the profiling of your community, that has contributed to your problem, and you don't go after them. You're going after all these stores. So understand there is a big part of Trump's base who looks at this and says, yeah, you might have a problem, but you're being a bunch of nuts just going out and burning up the town. And someone needs to put a stop to it. There's people who follow this line of thinking. Okay? And it's going to resonate with a lot of people. So let's understand this. Playing devil's advocate. Joe Biden wins in November. You think you've quelled it all, right? Violence subsides. The protests go away. The black community now believes that because Joe Biden is in office, they're going to get the change because he is their hero. We'll say that's the scenario, right? Clearly, you don't think that there's another group of folks out there who have felt kicked around in their own way by the government for a long, long, long time. Now, I'm not going to debate who's been put down worse by the government. Certainly, I believe that the inner city communities, the black communities, and minorities of all colors have suffered at legislation passed by the government in different ways. Okay? But overall, and I've made this point multiple times, what the government has done to the blue-collar community as a whole isn't color-based, folks. White people, black people, brown people, we've all suffered as a result of what the government has done for Wall Street while screwing Main Street. It's been going on for a long, long time. And you need to understand there's still a lot of voters, and of all colors, you could say predominantly white, but it's whatever. Okay? There's black people who still support Donald Trump. There's brown people who still support Donald Trump. And there's a lot of white people who support Donald Trump. Let's just call it like it is. So you get Joe Biden in office. This protest subsides. Clearly, you've got a short-term memory as to what is going to happen when you put someone in charge who doesn't even really come across to any of these people as a people's president. Now, I would not say Donald Trump has lived up to his reputation of being a people's president, but he's still got a lot of these people bought hook, line, and sinker. And a lot of this blue-collar community, especially down in this neck of the woods, genuinely believes that Donald Trump is a fucking martyr. And you need to get that through your heads. They are bought and sold that Donald Trump has been targeted through witch hunts. They are bought and sold that Donald Trump has been targeted through the impeachment. All this witch hunt bullshit. Russia, impeachment, all this. They just say the Democrats will stop at nothing to win the election and put Donald Trump out of office. And that was the president of blue-collar America. By God, he was going to bring America back. They believe this shit. They believe this shit. And yes, we've got a problem in the streets right now, but God almighty, if you're going to be that narrow-minded and forget what got Donald Trump elected in the first place, guess what the hell's going to happen again? You won't get necessarily Donald Trump, but you could end up with an even worse version of Donald Trump. If you don't like what you're seeing right now, understand you're going to swell that community up when Joe Biden gets elected. And there's going to be a lot of people who say Donald Trump was doing the right thing trying to stop these protests because they were hurting innocent people who weren't involved in these problems. He was the blue-collar president, and in 4 more years, or 8 more years, the Republican Party has realized where their bread's getting buttered politically when it comes to how to portray themselves. And they will, without a doubt, try to find the next big talking point. Sure, you've got some of the Jeb Bush, George Bush, Mitt Romney type people out there that'll probably make a go for it, but ain't gonna happen. They won't get elected. That blue-collar community is gonna say, we got 4 years, we got started to get an economy growing, and the Democrats had to close that all down, and we started getting jobs, and now the Democrats are going to trust that again. By God, we've got to win this election. They will nominate someone else. The right-wing blue-collar crowd is going to flood behind them. As we like to say around here, they will be all over this candidate like hogs on slop. Okay? They will flock to him, or her even, potentially, like a real leader, to go up against Joe Biden. And you'll have this whole damn thing over again. How am I the only one that sees this coming, and yet other folks don't seem to be able to? It's like your mind, in a lot of these cases, it's like their mind is stuck on a repeat. It's like, yeah, we were going to tell you a year ago, we need to understand why Donald Trump got elected so that we understand what's the problem. And now a year later, we're going to say, well, because of X, Y, and Z going on, maybe the lesser of two evils is the better choice, blah, 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 blah. And you don't think that when you elect that corporate candidates are the reason you have Donald Trump today. There were too many people that felt left behind, and he had the right things to say to catch their ear. And they voted for him. And I know some people think, oh, it's just because he was racist. No. Certainly there were some racists who came out and voted for Donald Trump. I won't dispute that. But there was a lot of people who genuinely felt that the way the government works, they were left behind. And here comes this brash New Yorker who told it like it was and spoke out for blue-collar America. They believe it. You don't have to agree with them, but they believe it. And if you put another corporate candidate back in office, you're not going to kill this sort of movement that brought you Donald Trump. You're going to rile it up again because they're going to feel like their hero has been just hit from every damn direction and was taken down by the system, and they are going to be pissed. They will be pissed. Don't be surprised if you don't get protests from that end of the spectrum. Now, you don't have to agree with what they're doing, but don't be surprised if violent protests don't erupt during a Joe Biden presidency from an entirely different group of folks. Could be a little more pale in complexion, but don't be surprised if it happens. They're tired of corporate America getting their way, and they believe Donald Trump was their man. Again, my viewers and the folks that watch this may not agree with that. The fact is the fact, but their opinion is what they're basing this on. Period. And you will wind up with someone else who's going to come out, pitch that I'm for the people argument, I'm for the people argument. And you could end up with another one. And this whole damn cycle will repeat itself over again. And if you considered yourself indie media, understand this. While you're now coming out and telling us, after all this time of complaining about the corrupt Democratic Party, how bad the Democratic Party really is, how they'll screw a people's candidate like Tulsi Gabbard or Bernie Sanders to put the Amy Klobuchar out front, to put the Pete Buttigieg out front, to put the Joe Biden out front. They'll screw them over to promote their candidate. You've been telling us how bad they are. And then you start telling us third party was the way. Go Libertarian. Go Green Party. Just vote third party. Quit voting for them. And now because of this, you start to ease off so much third party talk and start telling us how Donald Trump is just such a bad problem. Maybe Joe Biden's all right. I'm going to make the prediction that when Joe Biden gets elected, one, you're not going to be happy with Joe Biden, and it'll be only a matter of time until you start talking about third parties again under Joe Biden. But once you start back to talking about the third parties, who are you going to win over? You spent the final months leading into the election talking about how bad Donald Trump is and maybe we just ought to accept Joe Biden. That doesn't win anyone over to a single third party. You're doing exactly what Bernie Sanders did the day he went on CNN and said Joe Biden can beat Donald Trump. The mainstream media had pitched Bernie Sanders to be such a kook that he would lose to Donald Trump, and there were some people who were worried. They say, yeah, I like what the guy says, but every expert, and I use that loosely, but that's what they're thinking because they watch CNN, every expert has said that Bernie would lose to Trump. And then Bernie comes on and says Joe Biden would win, and all the experts say, well, hey, Bernie, I like what you said, but I want Trump gone, so I'm going to go vote for Joe Biden. He handed it over. So when you come out and say, we need a third party, but Trump has to go and maybe Joe's better, everybody's going to say, well, yeah, I want Trump gone too, and maybe I shouldn't go vote for that third party candidate because that might actually help Joe Biden lose the election. And I can't do that. And you're saying, Joe, yeah, maybe I just better pinch my nose, hold my breath, and jump in the pool. So you're really actually sheep herding people over yourself, doing stuff like that. And so when you start talking about third parties again, there's a lot of people that are going to say, oh, wait a minute. You were the third party guy who, instead of during the crisis was trying to still advocate for your third parties, started saying that Joe Biden was that cool hand Luke that might be the better option. So why are you talking about third parties again? You're going to lose credibility. You're going to sheep herd people over to Joe Biden. And when you start talking about third parties again, no one's going to listen the way they did before. So your credibility might not be completely gone, but it certainly won't be received the same way because when it came down to the fourth quarter, you didn't exactly jump on Team Biden, but you started telling us that it was a great team, basically. That it wasn't the best, but it was good enough. That mixed signal stuff is never going to pull anyone out of the Democratic Party to start voting third party. Period. This is the time, if you don't like the Democratic or the Republican Party, to plant your feet down and explain to the world. Talk to any Joe Biden supporters. Talk to the people of color who are tired of this, who are either in the peaceful protests or the violent ones. You talk to them and explain to them, I can't understand just what you go through, but I do understand you're fed the hell up. And I agree with you that a change needs to be made, but understand this. Donald Trump is certainly not going to be the answer to your problem, but neither is Joe Biden, and here's why. He voted for what has led to more of your problem. He is part of your problem. CNN won't tell you this, but if you don't believe me, let video speak for itself. I can show it to you. I don't want to see innocent black men and women killed. But as long as you vote for people like this, your problem will never fix itself. Because they don't care about you. Oh, they come around every 4 years and talk about it. Or when a tragedy happens, they'll talk about it. Why? Because they want your vote. When the rubber meets the road, they don't do shit for you. And I would encourage you to look at another option. And when they tell you, well, they're not going to win. Of course, they'll never win if no one takes the stand to go out and vote for them and stop voting for the two evils who think they've got your vote in the bag. Of course, they'll never win. But if you agree it needs to stop, and you agree we shouldn't vote because they're part of the problem, then I would encourage you to help me convince more people to not vote for them and make that stand and vote third party. This is the time to do it. It won't happen in this election cycle. It won't happen. I really don't believe that a third party will win the presidency. But understand this, we are really screwed with either one of those two that are probably going to win. Which is why we need to be doing everything possible to do whatever we can to win local elections and federal elections with third-party candidates going into 2024. And start removing Republicans and Democrats from office. We're going to have to start doing it. Or at least giving it our best damn effort. And anyone who's tired of the system and doesn't want to get out there and try to do the work to convince people to vote the third party, then you're clearly not that upset with the system. And anyone who's going to quasi-sheep herd people to Joe Biden because they don't like the way Donald Trump is handling this, even though if they do their homework, they know that Joe Biden might not be using this language that's inciting these riots to continue. But when it comes to policy, he's going to continue to be a part of this problem. Then no one's really going to think that they should ever go third party, because the mainstream media tells them that a third party can't win. You've got two choices, Democrat or Republican. Pick one. And if you vote for anybody else, you'll probably get the one that you didn't want to win because you took votes from the lesser of two evils. So that's what mainstream media tells you. And then you come along and say, this guy really shouldn't win, and I really don't like this guy, but he's slightly better, and we need to go back to being normal again. So, yeah, I don't like Joe Biden, but I guess we can deal with him. You're not ever going to win votes for third parties that way. And if that's really where your stance is at, I will put this as plainly as I can, because around here, we believe in getting to the point and just saying it like it is. That's really what your stance is. Don't bitch about the system. Don't complain. Don't gripe. Don't grumble. And don't complain about your jobs being outsourced. Don't complain about your wages never rising. Don't complain about the price of shit going up. while you don't get more money in your pockets, don't complain about not getting health care. Don't complain about any of it. Don't. Because when you get to this point in the game and start telling people how part of the problem might possibly be some kind of an answer, clearly you're not that fed up with what's been going on from the status quo. And so if you're really not that fed up to make a stand, you're just running your mouth. I'm not going to pull any punches with it. You're just flapping your fucking gums to an audience, and there's not a real emotion behind your message in the sense that it's time we take our country back. There's none. You can't be that serious about taking your country back and then all of a sudden hit the fucking brakes and start talking about how Joe Biden is a slightly better option. If you can utter those words and be serious and believe that because the orange man is bad, we can make do with Joe Biden, regardless of what's going on in the country, Joe Biden's part of that problem too. But if you can get the words out of your mouth to pretty much, Joe is the slightly better option, you're really not that fed up with what's going on. And if you don't believe violence is is the option people should take, and you believe voting at the ballot box is the way people should go, and yet you're not doing everything that you possibly can to win third-party votes, you're really not trying to fix your problem. So again, you really can't be that fed up with it if this is the stance you choose to take at this point in the game. And it's kind of like people say when you play in sports. If you're not here to win, go home. Seriously. If you're not here to really try to end the two-party dictatorship, then don't come on to a platform complaining about the two-party dictatorship only to falter over to them at the end of the day. That is why a lot of people disagreed with me, but that's why I could not just brush aside the way Bernie acted in 2016, the way he acted this election cycle, and yes, Tulsi signed a pledge. So since she signed a pledge, I give her pass there, extra praise, unnecessary. And I could not give her a pass on that. There's just no call for it if you really believe the things you've been telling us. Because who you're praising is part of what's been passing all the stuff you've been complaining about. They've been advocating for it. They've been behind it. And yet you're going to tell me how morally righteous they fucking are? My ass. Period. So, my message to indie media is, if you're tired of the two-party dictatorship, have some balls and keep calling them out and advocate for third-party voting. But this quasi-neutered bullshit that people are doing, this quasi-praise of Joe Biden, this ain't how you convince people in a time to not vote for their problem. Again, we're screwed whether we get Biden or Trump anyway. And you're probably going to get one of the two this election cycle because everyone, once again, hedged their bets on the fact that we needed to put some outsider candidates in the Democrat Party and we would take it over. Well, that did not work. So it's time to try the third party option and make it serious. But you're not going to do that talking about how one is really bad and one's bad, but even though he's bad, he's got two little qualities right now that might calm something down, even though we would get screwed over 6 ways from Sunday in every other category. So again, if you're not serious about fixing the problems in this country, and that does not include telling us how they're all right in some areas, if you're not really that serious about fixing the problem, don't complain about the problem. To me, and I will end it with this, doing that very thing is almost like complaining that getting stabbed hurts and you should avoid getting stabbed at all costs, but then throwing yourself onto a spike. If you're going to throw yourself on a spike, don't come and complain about how bad getting stabbed is and you should never get stabbed with something. There's 1,000 comparisons I could draw this up to. But one thing that is just absolutely uncalled for is to complain to people that there's a problem. We should fix the problem. But rather than really trying to fix the problem, maybe we should just kind of deal with a problem that's already there, just might be not quite as bad of a problem. Ridiculous. Either get serious about taking your country back or don't complain when you make no progress in taking your country back. And that's just all there is to it.